Right now, you probably have, 47 apps on your phone, a streaming service with 10,000 things to watch, a hyper-specific playlist for literally every mood, and yet somehow, you still get bored. It's such a universal, frustrating feeling. Welcome to Vision Mundi. Here is a question almost nobody thinks to ask. What did humans do 100,000 years ago when there was absolutely nothing to do? No writing, no art, no music as we know it, just sitting there. Well, in this explainer, we're going to unpack the secret history of doing nothing and why it changes everything we know about your brain. And before we really get into it, make sure to subscribe to Vision Mundi right now before the modern stimulation glitch completely deletes your creativity. Let's dive in.
Okay, let's shatter a brutal myth right out of the gate. For the longest time, researchers just assumed our earliest ancestors lived in this grueling 24/7 survival mode. We pictured them constantly fighting off predators just to see tomorrow. But that assumption turned out to be completely wrong. It was, in fact, simply human to experience vast amounts of downtime. I want you to imagine cave life not as an endless battle, but more like a long Sunday without the internet, without a TV. Just hours upon hours of quiet stretching out in front of you.
Section 1. The Prehistoric Chill. Work-life balance in 10,000 BC.
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to look at the groundbreaking work of anthropologist Marshall Solins. Back in 1966, he published a study that flipped everything we thought we knew completely upside down. He spent years observing the Kungan people in the Kalahari Desert, a group living incredibly close to our original ancestors' lifestyle, and he uncovered a truly shocking number: 15 to 20. That is the total number of hours they worked per week. Let that sink in for a second. Not per day, per week. The rest of the time, they rested, they talked, and they simply did nothing in particular. It completely breaks the illusion that ancient humans were constantly grinding. Prehistoric hunter-gatherers genuinely had way more free time than the modern 9-to-5 worker, who was just buried under endless to-do lists.
The crucial point here is captured beautifully in this quote. Solins actually called them the original affluent society. And the crazy thing is, they were affluent not because they had a bunch of material wealth, but because they had endless time. They were rich in hours, which naturally raises the ultimate fascinating question. What on earth did they actually do with all of that profound, inescapable boredom?
Section 2. Farming aura and art. The urge to be the main character. To figure out how they killed time, we just need to look at what they left behind. A massive 2010 discovery by archaeologist Francesco De Rico at Blombos Cave perfectly explains how humans first attempted to essentially farm aura. These artifacts are 75,000 years old. They're tiny shells, painstakingly drilled through and completely coated in red ochre pigment. But here's the kicker. They weren't tools. They weren't weapons. They were purely for jewelry. Taking hours, maybe days, to drill through shells without power tools wasn't born out of any survival necessity. That was born entirely out of boredom and the ego-driven desire to be the main character of the tribe. You didn't just paint a bison on a cave wall to stay warm. You did it to show everyone you had the swagger and the free time to pull it off.
Watch how this builds across human history. Around 100,000 years ago, that deep boredom really begins to set in. 75,000 years ago, we get the Blombos Cave beads. But look at 40,000 years ago. Researchers in southern Germany found a flute made out of a vulture bone, complete with 5 finger holes. Before agriculture, before cities, someone just sat down with a bird bone in a free afternoon and literally invented music. It proves that our greatest artistic leaps emerge directly from having absolutely nothing to do. But why music, right? Well, music equals pattern recognition. Neuroscientist Daniel Levitin argues that our brains were wired for rhythm and melody long before we could even form complex language. Playing with rhythm when there was nothing else to do kept our brains active. Pattern recognition is precisely the cognitive skill that kept our ancient brains wired, sharp, and alive in the wild.
Section 3. Animals vs. bored humans. The global mirror. So, boredom didn't just invent art and music, it birthed imagination itself. To truly feel bored, you have to possess a fundamental understanding of time. You have to recognize that the future exists and, crucially, that the future could be much better and more interesting than your present moment. This brings us to the global mirror contrast. Think about it. A bored animal, like a waiting dog or a sleeping cat, just exists in the present. It waits, it naps. But a bored human sitting around a prehistoric fire doesn't just sleep, their mind wanders. They start building a tiny doodle Stonehenge in the dirt. They start imagining what happens after death, what's over the mountain. And out of that totally empty space, they invent religion, philosophy, and early science. Psychologist Sandy Mann actually proved just how powerful this state is in her 2013 research. She had subjects do the most mind-numbing task possible, copying numbers from a phone book to induce extreme boredom. Immediately after, she tested their creativity. And guess what? The incredibly bored group dramatically outperformed everyone else who just had standard day-to-day stimulation. Why? Because when you are bored, the brain is quite literally forced to generate its own stimulation.
Section 4. The original social software. Gossip as the ultimate glitch.
Aside from making bone flutes, what did people do when they were sitting around the fire with absolutely nothing to do? They talked about each other. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent years studying what humans talk about when they aren't talking about anything important. The finding? A staggering 65% of human conversation is social gossip. Who did what? Who said what? But it wasn't just spilling the tea. This gossip was the original social glitch, the conversational engine that kept the entire tribe unified and kept them from catching a catastrophic loss in the wild.
Here's how it evolved, step by step. Originally, primates bonded through physical grooming, picking bugs off each other. But that is incredibly time-consuming and purely one-to-one. Language and gossip eventually replaced that physical grooming. Suddenly, sitting around the fire, you could bond with 10 people at once just by telling a story. It acted as the original social software, allowing humans to form cohesive groups of up to 150 people, ultimately leading to the grandest leap of all, human civilization and the ability to trust complete strangers.
Section 5. Modern Stimulation Glitch. The Death of the Void.
We all know the modern tribunal reality. Lying awake at 2 a.m., the blue light of a smartphone resting on your chest, desperately swiping through TikTok and Reels because we are absolutely terrified of an empty mind. Psychology calls this cognitive overload. Constant, endless stimulation prevents the brain from processing, consolidating, and creating. When we never allow our brains to be truly empty, we completely kill the chance to invent the next big thing. And it opens up Dossier 2050, the terrifying question of the post-leisure AI. If artificial intelligence steps in to do all of our thinking and takes away our boredom entirely, do we just revert to being a beautiful one? Perfectly fed and entertained, but completely devoid of purpose, exactly like the doomed mice in that infamous Universe 25 experiment?
This isn't just theory, guys. It is pure biology. It's called the default mode network. This is the part of your brain responsible for creativity, deep self-reflection, and empathy. And here is the absolute craziest catch. It only activates when you are doing nothing. Boredom is a biological feature, not a bug. It proves that 300,000 years of human evolution literally requires us to sit in silence to function properly.
Think of it exactly like this. Feeling bored isn't a failure to find entertainment. It is simply your brain's internal notification system popping up and screaming that a software update is required. Your mind needs that empty space to process your life and generate brand new ideas.
So here is my challenge for you today. Put the phone down. Embrace the void. The next time you feel that itch of boredom, just let it ride. Do exactly what that person in the cave did 100,000 years ago. Look up at the stars, let your mind wander, and start asking why. Before you go, I want to leave you with this question to answer down in the comments. What is the most creative thing you have ever done when you were truly, profoundly bored out of your mind? I'd absolutely love to hear your stories. Until next time, Logic Glitch.